easier than making one gigantic PowerPoint. So welcome everyone to the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission orientation. In my time here, the only other orientation has been like a very long meeting where we stayed in the community room and kind of went through the handbook, and it was great. But I really wanted to develop a new way for us to move forward, and starting this off with like a tour to see some of the sites, as well as meeting a local Athens artist, like to really bring a lot of like different ways for you to arrive at the ACC Public Art Program. So thank you for being here. I'm going to start off with just kind of explaining where we are in the grand scheme of Athens-Clarke County. This has an electric pointer on it.
Oh, yeah, it has an on-off switch on this part.
Oh, did you put it? Yeah. Oh, you have to, it's down. So it's- But how do I use the pointer? Oh, see, okay. Here we go. So the residents of Athens-Clarke County vote this entire tier of people into office, right? So the mayor and commission oversee the manager's office. And from the manager's office, it breaks down into two sections. You have assistant manager here, assistant manager there. This right now is Nikki. His name's Nikki Jones. Thank you, Jones. Sorry, I was thinking of Nikki Haley because that's our. Anyway, so that's what I've been reading about. Sorry. So this is Nikki Jones. Over here we have Josh Edwards. So currently, they sometimes switch places, and we just got switched from Nikki to Josh. So under Josh, you have the leisure services director. Okay. So that's like the manager takes the information from the mayor and commission and executes it through all of the staff services. And so from there, you'll see we have, here's Kate Kilpatrick, Department Director for Leisure Services. Alex Bond, as you know, is the Assistant Director for Leisure Services. The other parts of Leisure Services include an internal services section, and then we have the Recs Division and the Nature Division. So here's me, the Arts Division Administrator, and all of this here includes the Arts Division, which is 15 full-time staff and 7 part-time staff. Those are the positions. We have a couple of vacancies. So here's Tatiana, and then you have the East Athens Educational Dance Center, 3 full-time staff members. The Linden House Art Center has 4 full-time staff members, 4 part-time. The Morton Theater has 3, 4, 5 within. So you have the Morton Theater here, and then also you have the Athens Creative Theater. So it's 2 full-time staff members, and we have 2 part-time here. So this is just like an overhaul of what the entire arts division is, for which the public art program is here with Tatiana's role. So that includes the arts division is the Athens Creative Theater at Quinn Hall, which is in the back side of Memorial Park. It's kind of tucked away. If you've never been in there before, it might be hard to see. The East Athens Educational Dance Center, which I think y'all went by on your tour tonight. The Linden House Arts Center, including the historic Ware Linden House, and the Morton Theater, and then you have the Athens Public Art Program. So that's like where we are in the scope of Athens. So also Tati and I wanted to include some slides about who we are, so that you have some like how we got here. So I'll say this, I'm a native Athenian. I was born and raised in Athens. I graduated from Clark Central High School. And so I moved back here, and I've lived a bunch of other places, but I joined Athens-Clarke County Leisure Services in the summer of 2019, just in time for the pandemic. So that was really fun. I had been in my job for like about 8 months when that happened. So but I'm still here, and like, so that was a bit of a learning. I hadn't worked here very long, but all of a sudden I was like just working at home alone, right? As we all were, but here we are. So some background for me, I have a degree in photography, a degree in art history, and my master's degree in arts administration from SCAD. And prior to this, like I have a bunch of job history, but the most recent ones were mostly in Savannah. So prior to this work, I was the interpretation and community engagement person for Telfair Museums. And one of my signature programs there that I'm really proud of is hashtag Art912, which when I first joined the Telfair Museums, I had been working at SCAD, and I told all kinds of my colleagues and students and faculty and people I had built, I'd been at SCAD for 7 years, in a very frontline position. And I was like, oh yeah, we can go work at Telfair Museums. And they were like, where's that? Yes, it's like 5 blocks that way. Thinking, they'd never been before. So one of the first things I really wanted to talk about with my community engagement component at Telfair was like, I wanted artists to come to the Telfair museums from all across the city and like to see themselves and have like how we supported artists. So I came up with a program that was attached to an exhibition around contemporary artists in America called State of the Arts. That was out of Crystal Bridges, and we had it touring in our museum. And so I just created a way for 912 is the area code for coastal, for that part of Savannah. So it's just a hashtag at the time. Hashtags were the thing in Instagram, so that everybody could use it and artists could see each other's work. People could talk about work and talk about art and artists in Savannah just with that simple hashtag. It's still popping today. It's got like 25,000 uses on Instagram. Like, I'm really proud of it. And it's also still a signature part of Telfair's programming. They have all kinds of fashion and classes and exhibitions, and they tag that when it's local. That's what they use. So that was like a way for us to like really raise the visibility of artists that were working and living in Savannah. And so I feel really like a lot of work I did there was fantastic. I'm particularly proud of that one. And then prior to that, I was the head of outreach and access services at Gen Library, which was a really great experience because I got to meet so many artists and faculty members and visiting artists. I did all kinds of programming at the library in Savannah, as well as at the time SCAT had campus in Hong Kong. So I was there for part of the expansion out to the Hong Kong campus and building a library collection there. And then working with all the librarians across the globe. I worked at the Lacoste France campus as well many times. I was the liaison for the Lacoste library. So that was a really rich experience where I learned a lot about the academics around art. So that's a little bit of my background. So in my spare time, I founded a program, I founded a art program in 2016 with a couple of friends in Savannah called Hestia, and we built out artist residencies and artist-centered projects. So in 2017, we hosted 3 artists in Savannah for 2 weeks. I did all the programming around that. And then we hosted in 2018, an artist from Savannah in Southern California. We collaborated with another residency out there. And then in May of this year, we hosted a 2-day symposium in County Clare, Ireland, where my colleagues in Hestia like decamped to Ireland in the campaign. So that is a project-based thing that I work on in my spare time as I'm able to. That is like artist-centered work, largely around artist residencies and just like artist-centered work. I also am working as post artist is the title for the work I do around legacy planning for artists, the thing I did with the Innovation Hub on campus at UGA, a project. And right now that's like, so I help artists think about what to do with their work when they're no longer with us on this earth, which is like a weird and interesting topic. And some of the ways I'm approaching that is in documentary. So I'm in the post-production of a short documentary film about Harold Wittenberry, which is another thing I'm doing on my personal time. And then in addition to that, I also do like, advocacy work, consulting as hired and independent curation. So this, when I'm not doing this with the whole of the division, I'm also doing some stuff when I have the time. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, Tati's going to do her bio as well. So you guys have a little bit of like kind of where we arrived at this job. So here's some things we're going to talk about tonight, and we're going to touch on all of these. But here's are the main goals for the public art program for this FY. To offer the ACC BAC training and ACA new member orientation. Tick, we're doing that right now. Awesome. To update the ACC Public Art Master Plan, and I'm going to talk about this later, to offer professional development opportunity for Athens artists, something I think we can all agree on is necessary. We can do more on that front. And to develop the ACC Public Art Maintenance Plan and assess the current needs. We're in the midst of doing that right now, but that's like something that will also be a big focus for us this year. We're already underway. And then introduce the Community Collaboration Program, which Tatiana's going to talk about. Now Tati's going to talk about. Now I'm going to let, yeah, I'm going to let you drive this down. Nope, we'll have to close this out and open up. Yours is across the bottom. If you click on the, see it down there. This I can sit. So show of hands, I haven't looked at my recent report. I get a report of who's completed their BAC training, the official BAC training, which is the videos and the quizzes. So quick show of hands, who has done it? Completed all 5 parts. Okay. Who is it starting to? Okay. Okay, great. So I'm going to give a little overview. There's a lot of stuff in that BAC training, more than I can do in just a short presentation. I'm going to try to hit the highlights. However, just to be clear, this does not take the place of your official BAC training. You do have to complete those videos and quizzes on your time. I haven't got any sort of, scolding yet for having people that haven't completed yet. So I guess there's still time. However, it is really important because it's a lot more stuff than I can address in one meeting. But let's talk about the general role of BACs. So they're a structured way for individual citizens to share their opinions and perspectives, study issues, develop recommendations, and participate in board decisions in a focused small group structure. The primary purpose of BACs is to provide judicious advice from a citizen perspective to the Mayor Commission, which is the unified government's elected policy-making body, to make quasi-judicial decisions in an administrative proceeding or to participate in board governance as provided in applicable law or ordinance. So that's just from your manual and reminders. So that has a little bit of information in that went through all. So let's talk about the Mayor and Commission. We saw in Stephanie's presentation kind of the structure of where the manager is, kind of where the Mayor and Commission are, and where everybody else falls in the structure. So some BACs interact with the Mayor and Commission by providing recommendations, like y'all. And making decisions, the Mayor and Commission considers general citizen comment, BAC recommendations, staff recommendations, Mayor and Commission priorities and goals, research, and background information, and individual commissioner perspectives. So the recommendations from ACAC are just one of the many considerations that the Mayor and Commission uses to make their decisions. So, there may come in time where the staff recommendation and the ACAC recommendation are on opposite ends, and it might be up to the Mayor and Commission to make that decision. But it's just one of many recommendations that they consider when they're making these decisions. So just something to keep in mind. It's nothing to feel insulted about. They weigh a lot of opinions when they're making any decision. So let's talk about summary of expectations. All BAC meetings are to be conducted in public session and noticed in accordance with state law. Okay, so that's something that I take care of. I make sure that our agendas and our meeting announcements are posted on the ACC Gov calendar because that's a requirement by state law. So individual BAC members and the collective group will be fair, impartial, and respectful of the public, staff, and each other. Right? It's nice, good practice. BAC members will respect the limitations of their individual and collective authority. The role of the committee is to advise the Mayor and Commission and/or staff, or to make administrative decisions based on evidence and applicable legal standard. Please keep in mind that BAC appointment does not empower you to make final decisions or to supervise staff. Okay, does everyone understand that? So you're making recommendations, but that's not necessarily the final law of the land. Members will strive to appreciate differences in approach and point of view, whether from each other, the community, the Mayor and Commission, or staff. Again, we got a lot of opinions, we got a lot of different personalities, so we just have to be respectful of everybody. More summary of expectations. Each member will participate in the group's discussions and work assignments without dominating the discussion or activity of the BAC. Now, this is really important because historically we've had some members that were very passionate about this work, and that's wonderful. However, you can't just go rogue and kind of do your own thing and say that's really important. Trust me when I say that can cause a lot of issues in both your BAC's reputation and how you interact with staff, whether it be us, whether it be with the manager's office, whether it be with the Mayor and Commission, city manager, city attorney, whoever it might be. Just keep in mind that you have to kind of work together as a group and not just say, well, I'm the only one doing this work, so I'm just going to go ahead and do my own thing. It's not how it works. So, As an individual member, of a BAC, you must not represent your own views or recommendations as those of the BAC unless the majority of the body has officially voted to approve such action. Just kind of reiterating what I already said. So that's really important, okay? Follow the attendance policy noted in your bylaws. Now, I've included a copy of the bylaws. It does note how many meetings you can miss. Again, it's more of a suggestion. No one's going to officially ask you to step down if you violate the attendance policy. But if you can't fulfill your commitment to the group, it might be a good idea to vacate your seat and let someone else. And things happen, you know, different things happen in our lives, new jobs, new commitments, and sometimes you have to kind of reassess those things. We follow Robert's Rules of Order with our meetings, or we try our best. But, and again, this is to give everybody an opportunity to speak without having just the loudest person in the room dominating the conversation. So it's kind of by design that we use Robert's Rules. We try to minimize conflicts of interest, political bias, and misuse of official position for political motivations. Regards to conflicts of interest, there's a whole video about conflicts of interest in your BAC training. It's really complicated, and we're in a very small town. It's really hard to avoid conflicts completely, but mostly this is about kind of financial conflicts, if you have like a financial gain from a decision that's made or something like that. So in order for a BAC to conduct any business or take any formal action, it's necessary that a quorum of the membership be present at the meeting. A quorum consists of the majority of the total number of members that comprise the BAC. This quorum requirement does not change even if a position on the BAC is vacant and the commission has not appointed a replacement. In the event that a quorum is not present for a meeting, those present can adjourn the meeting to a later date and time. Okay. So that's something we've kind of, you know, dealt with a lot, especially when we had a lot of vacant seats. Hopefully going forward, that's not going to be an issue, but our quorum is always 6, no matter what. So it's 11 people. And you must complete the BAC training. That's the last one. And again, next to your official. Okay, so a little about ACAC. It's 11 members. It's a 3-year term, but there's no limit. So you can renew your term as many times as the rest of the group wants to keep you. So we've had members that stay on for a very long time, like Helen, how long were you on the commission officially? It's at least 10 years. Was it 10 years? It's 10 years. It's 10 years. A long time. And we were happy to have it for that time. So again, you can renew, but there is a renewal process. It involves just drafting a letter to the mayor and commission, and I help y'all with that. Make sure it gets submitted to the clerk's office. So regular meetings are the second Monday of each month at 6 p.m. They're generally at the Linen House Art Center. We switched it up tonight. You know, special meetings happen, you know, from time to time outside of that. So the major duties, responsibilities, the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission has been established to advise the United Government of Athens-Clarke County on cultural affairs and aesthetic development of the built environment in accordance with provisions of planning, programming, procurement, installation, operation, and maintenance of public art projects and parking. And y'all are appointed by the mayor and commission. So even though this group does its own interviews and selects its own members, those recommendations still go to mayor and commission for final approval. So we do have the final say. I have had yet to see them not approve anybody during my time, but I'm sure it's happened. I think it might have happened. No, you picked good people, so good for us. And your liaisons are myself and Stephanie, Public Art Coordinator, and the Arts Division Administrator. So let's talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities. So the liaisons are staff professionals with significant work responsibilities in addition to their liaison activities. In general, the liaisons are individuals who have staff responsibilities that relate to the same work area as the BAC. Liaisons do not work for or at the direction of the BAC.
They're professionals who work with the BAC to develop information and recommendations for mayor and commission consideration, okay? So amongst y'all, we have some officer roles. We have the chair, who leads group meetings and individual member communications. So if there's maybe something that y'all have questions about, or you have questions about, you can go, she can't answer your questions, she'll ask me. And let's say if there's something where, you know, we have a member that's not coming to meetings, it's gonna be Victoria that kind of contacts that member and says, hey, I've noticed you're not coming to the meetings. Are you wanting to continue on the commission? Maybe this isn't a good fit, that sort of thing, or if there's any kind of issues amongst y'all. Which I hate to put that on her, but that's kind of the chair's role. And of course, assist in drafting recommendation letters, onboarding members, etc. Of course, I help a lot with that as well. The vice chair is sort of our chair in waiting, kind of traditionally. They're the acting chair in the absence of a chair. If a chair resigns or steps down, it's kind of assumed that the vice chair is at least interim chair. And they basically just assist the chair as needed. Then our secretary records the minutes and sends them to me to make sure they get posted on the in the agenda center, and all of our meetings get recorded with the clerk's office. And they also record the member attendance too. So we rely on them because they write down who's present in the meetings. They help us keep track of, you know, who's coming to meetings and who isn't. And then our treasurer who prepares budget reports as needed for discussion. And again, those aren't our, we have a report that goes out automatically to me and Stephanie and Alex that shows kind of like our accounts each month. So we don't really need that kind of bookkeeping as far amongst the commission itself. But let's say you were having a discussion about how much money should be spent in a certain way. The treasurer might prepare a report for that. So, but not just our general balance statements. We get those automatically every month. So what does the public art coordinator do? What do I do? So I serve as project coordinator and artist liaison for public art projects and programs. So these are all our trust-funded projects, all our capital projects, our poet laureate program, etc. I facilitate all stages of the public art process, from planning and site selection, drafting calls, managing applicants, organizing selections, presentations, contracts, fabrication, installation, and collection care. So from planning to the life of the art, it's all part of what I do. I handle all communications, promotions, record keeping and reporting for all projects and programs. I work with departments and stakeholder groups. And I keep my VACs, because I have two. I have this group, and I have the Athens Music Walk of Fame Committee. And I keep them on task and in compliance with state law. And I have general duties as an ACCGov leisure services employee. We do a lot of events and things where, you know, I help out. And I have all kinds of duties outside of my work at the ACAC. So that's a little bit about me. And then Stephanie supervises me. And she also oversees the whole arts division, which she outlined for you. And she has kind of a leadership role in department administration and in the arts community. And so again, just kind of going over all of the things that are part of the arts division. And here's me.
Yeah.
So a little bit about me. I was born in Connecticut in 1982. I was raised in South Florida and I moved to Georgia in 2000 to go to SCAD. I graduated from SCAD in 2004. I majored in illustration and I minored in sculpture. I moved to Athens in 2006. I worked as a graphic designer and creative director, curator. I ran Athica for 2.5 years. I ran my own space for a couple years after that. I started working for the commission in 2016 as a They are dying to get in here.
And then they're like, we want to hear all about it.
Breaking down the door, like, what are those camels doing? We want to know what's up. I started working with the commission in 2016 as a part-time administrative assistant, essentially. And so I've worked on a lot of our public art projects since, all of our public art projects since 2016, so I'm very familiar with them. And I became full-time in 2021. Myself, I'm also an artist. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I work in 2D and 3D. I also do work in film and writing and all sorts of things. I really enjoy all of it. Do a little acting. Sometimes I sing. Yeah. So, and my general interests are the arts, obviously. Duh. I also love to travel and I love to collect all kinds of things. I'm a big vintage collector and I have a lot of accessories are kind of my thing. Color is kind of my thing. I don't know if y'all noticed. So those are just some of my interests and background. So that's a little bit about me. So any questions? And that's me in Morocco this past summer in the Sahara. It was awesome. And I recommend you go there. Maybe not right now, but you know.
Can I ask a question about, so the ordinance for the purpose and establishment of the commission talks explicitly about the built environment. I noticed, for instance, that you talk about, and this might not be related to the commission and more so just your duties, but you talked about the poet laureate program.
Right.
And I know sometimes you discuss maybe, community grants. So I'm just kind of curious how strict, I guess, the application of the built environment aspect of our purpose is to what we do, or do we kind of also work with supporting other kinds of programming that aren't tied to built projects?
Great question. The poet laureate program is pretty new. It's kind of a unique thing. It may not always be housed in public art. We talked about maybe, you know, it might be a good fit for another entity like the library or something like that. So, but sometimes we have programs that are kind of, you know, the brainchild of this group, and we do our best to kind of make them happen if we can. It doesn't always work out that way. But sometimes, you know, there's opportunities for other kinds of programming. For instance, you know, we have the Lantern Parade, which is a big, you know, it's both visual art, performing art. There's a lot of different elements. And so this group can make contributions to an event like that. So that's something that we might talk a little bit about later. But it's a great question. But the primary focus is on the built environment. And that was kind of the, you know, what started this group, is that there wasn't really, we've had the Arts Council, but there wasn't really a government entity that was providing funding or anything for public art. That's 11. So, you know, wet my whistle a little bit. So now we'll talk about public art process. I don't know, but there's the, you're on. Yeah, okay, process. So just a little introduction to public art process. So what is public art? Public art is art in any medium whose form, function, and meaning are created for the general public through a public process. That public process part is really important. In Athens-Clarke County, local ordinance established that all ACC SPLOST budgets utilize 1% of construction budgets for capital public art projects. So when we say capital projects, we mean physical things you can touch and hold, murals, sculptures, things like that. This does not include performing arts. So here's a little overview of some of our funding buckets for public art. There's an operating budget, and that's just, you know, ongoing costs, things like website hosting, office supplies, things like that, just sort of your general goods and services that you need, things that you really want to know about. You should have left them in, and just let them learn.
Right, and saying that she's right. So they're
What?
gonna-
I mean, it couldn't be any
There's
more.
No bees.
Here, put it right.
Right.
So our operating budget has, gradually increased over time. Right now, it's $45,000 annually. And it needs to be used, well, it doesn't need to be used, but basically we only have that amount for the fiscal year. And then the next year it starts over again. And June 30th is always the end of the fiscal year for us. Then we have our project budget. Now, when we talk about the 1% for our funding, we're talking about the project budget. So that's 1% of SPOS and T-SPOS construction budget. So not the full budget. There's sometimes equipment costs and things and labor and things like that. So it comes specifically from the construction budget. If there's no construction budget, there's no project budget for public. But we can add to that budget with some of these other buckets here. I'll talk about those. So these are project specific. So it's 1% of construction budget to do a project on that funding project's site. So, and it doesn't have to necessarily be in the sub-project. So let's say if you have something like Greenway, which has multiple sub-projects, it doesn't necessarily mean that the art has to go in those individual sub-project areas. It just has to go on the Greenway. If that makes sense. So capital funding, we get 25,000 each year, and that's increased over time. And that, that doesn't go away at the end of the fiscal year. We can keep that. And right now we're at 97,000 in our capital fund. And that can also fund one-time project costs, things like a consultant or research, or things of that nature, which you wouldn't necessarily think of as capital, like, because they're not a physical thing. But if it's a one-time expense for a particular capital project, then you can use capital funds for that. And then we have the SPLOST 2011 Project 21 budget. Now, I've talked about SPLOST, and I think most of you are familiar with SPLOST and that they're, come on in. No? Okay. So most of you are familiar with our SPLOST and T-SPLOST type. You have a project list, so you have multiple projects, and that can go over several years of actual execution. Right now, we're still working on 2011 projects still, if you can believe it or not. We're also working on SPLOST 2020 projects. And we're also working on T-SPLOST 2018 projects. So there's a lot, but most of these projects take several years from start to finish, planning, implementation, that sort of thing. So what started the our public art program was that they put in for a SPLOST project. The founding ACAC members put in for a SPLOST project, and that became Project 21. It's a big pool of funds that's just to fund public art. It's not any particular project site or anything like that. It does have to be on county property, just like all of our projects. And any expenditures from that need approval from the SPLOST Citizen Oversight Committee. So for example, with Bishop Park, it was kind of a not quite meaty enough of a budget for what we want to do. So we added 15,000 from the SPLOST 2011 Project 21 funds. And we had to basically, I had to present to the Citizen Oversight Committee to get approval for that, which they approved, which is great. We've yet to have them not approve one of our projects. They're very positive about public art. And, but it is just another, I guess, kind of box to check when we want to use those funds. That makes sense to everybody? I know it's a lot of, yes.
When it says needs to be used by the closeout of SPLOST 2011, when is the closeout?
Great question. So the cost of building is project 37 of SPLOST 2011, and it's, we have some time before that one's going to get going. There's a couple other projects, I think. So we probably have another few years before it's officially, what would you, 4 years?
I said 5.
5 years? That's probably, yeah. I'd say 5 years or so.
But so anything that is not spent by the time it closes out is lost.
Correct, it cannot be transferred, but I have some ideas about how we can use those
I'm
funds before the time runs out, but we'll get to that at the end. I know it's a lot, but it's a lot of money. So there's a lot of money that we have for public art, which is wonderful.
Tatiana, so we have to spend $45,000.
No, you don't have to. It's just, it doesn't carry over to the next year. It's not like you get any sort of reprimand or anything.
So let me, so any operational dollars that don't get spent.
Yeah.
Do get turned back into the general ledger, and that funds the capital project 2 years later. So when we're talking about where does the capital fund money come from, that's how that money gets there. So you may feel the pressure, oh, we need to, like that money has to be spent, but just understand anything else or anything surrendered helps fund other aspects of the government.
And if I'm remembering from last time, because I think this is where I always get hung up is if we don't, I always feel like if we don't spend it, then we might not get it next year, which is not true.
It's not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
But it's
I think the feeling of urgency to spend it is like, well, if we don't spend it and we have a history of not spending it, then we won't get it. But it's like, I think that's where we have to shift our thinking about, like, it's still good.
In the year,
You don't just throw the money in the trash.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, there's a process that gets back into the capital, like, I think that's helpful to understand where it flows.
But in most organizations, you spend the money that you have put. Am I wrong? So you
And a lot of this money was from back when y'all were paying a staff person, which you are not anymore.
That's what I was gonna.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, and they didn't take the money with them.
Right.
So that's why it's like, y'all aren't spending as much the past couple years because
Helpful.
you don't have staff.
So helpful.
So I thought too that part of it was 20-something thousand was for the arts and, arts and community? Is that correct?
Well, we have some, it's not gonna be the way it has been.
No, I'm saying, but that's how it got to that 45K.
Sure. Yes, that was part of, that would come out of that budget.
Okay.
Yes. Which has been a little, we just have to kind of.
We've reoriented a way to achieve the same goal, but we have to approach it differently. I'm gonna get to that.
Yeah, I remember asking in a meeting how we got to 45, and that was part of the explanation.
But like,
I have no idea how it's gonna be now, but I know it's gonna be different, and I'm ready to hear.
Okay. So
Yeah, there was like a lot of excitement that we were gonna be able to infuse more funding now into the community because we didn't have to pay for the staffing element.
Right,
anymore.
okay.
So, but of course, the process is changing, so.
Yeah.
But it's still the ultimate goal is to put it back
Into the community.
that is still a goal. We're still gonna achieve that. We're just in a different process.
Thank you.
Oh. It coincided with them.
I know, it's just, it's that good.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the process, which is a little bit convoluted. I made this very reductive chart.
And that's in here, right?
It is in there. And following this very reductive chart is some better notes that kind of explain the process in length. They're not as pretty and colorful as the chart, but those are there to supplement and to kind of explain this for you. So I'm actually gonna notes. Going through this.
I can say, Tatiana, you can tell an art person did this chart. Colorful. Mine would be in black and white.
In Bach.
It'd be word on the Word document.
So I've kind of combined some of the steps a little bit because after pretty much each step, we need an approval from the mayor and commission. So in order to make the chart a little more succinct, we just kind of narrowed it down. So kind of the first step with most projects is the project selection and approval. So when we talk about project selection and not necessarily the site selection and that sort of thing, project selection happens every few years when there's a new batch of SPLOST or T-SPLOST projects. So, you know, that big list comes out of all the projects. So for example,
Sorry, I ring my doorbell.
so I'll use SPLOST 2020 as an example. So when the SPLOST 2020 project list was approved by Mayor and Commission, they said, here are our SPLOST projects for 2020. ACAC, along with SPLOST, would sit down and kind of go over all of those projects, find out which projects were eligible for public art, meaning projects that have a construction budget. Because remember, if it's something like equipment replacement, new PPE for the firefighters, for example, we're not taking 1% of that. It's just for construction. So not every SPLOST and T-SPLOST project is eligible for public art funding. So we work with SPLOST to kind of establish what are the projects that are eligible, and then beyond that, what are the projects that are suitable for public art? So let's say you're doing something like laying fiber optic cable underneath the ground. Well, the site is underneath the ground. Are you gonna bury some art? No, we're not gonna do that.
I mean,
So
that's capital.
So not every project with a construction budget is gonna be suitable for public art. So I'll talk a little bit about the criteria that we use to select the projects and the sites a little bit later on. So once we have a list of projects that we go, these are the ones that are gonna have public art. These are the ones that make sense. That goes to Mayor and Commission for approval. And that's gonna be like a big, long list of just the project numbers and that sort of thing. So we had our SPLOST 2020 project list. You know, the few months after that was approved, there was the ACAC recommendation for the public art list. And that's the list that we're working through right now. So next month, I'll be talking to you about T-SPLOST 2023, because those projects were just approved by Mayor and Commission. We got a lot of projects. And again, some of them have very small budgets. Some of them can maybe be kind of grouped together for calls, like for bus shelters or something like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that next month and how we select those projects. And that's kind of a group discussion. We really rely heavily on staff, not just myself and Stephanie and Alex, but also the SPLOST department and, you know, all the designated departments that are going to be working on those projects. So kind of a big group effort. So that's project selection. So that's that first step there. So now we're going on to site selection. So individual projects are assigned, well, most of them are assigned a user group, and a user group is assigned by the manager's office. A user group is usually made up of staff members, ACC staff members, and any kind of relevant stakeholders. Let's say might be commission members of a certain one of our VACs. There's, how many VACs are there? 70, something like that. You know, trees, planning, all sorts of things. So sometimes those members are part of a user group, sometimes different organizations are part of a user group. It just kind of depends. It differs project to project. And then sometimes projects don't have a user group at all. And so in the absence of a user group, I would just work with the designated staff members and relevant staff members and stakeholders. So part of what I do is I do presentations with the user group, kind of get a feel for what might be work for a particular site. So let's say we use a park as an example. We use Dudley Park. So a Dudley Park user group would probably have a lot of members of leisure services staff, maybe some Greenway Commission members, a bunch of people. So I present to them and kind of give them an overview of public art in the process, just like I'm doing with you all now. And we have a conversation about different sites. Sometimes we work with the architects and designers who might say, oh, we have this wall over here that would work for a mural, or we have this green space over here. So we look at the design plans and any schematics and kind of analyze what the needs of the site are. And my goal with that is to come up with some options that I bring back to y'all for a recommendation. So what's worked really well for us in the past, recent past, is that I come to you with a PowerPoint, I might show you, I'll give you all the project history, I'll show you different options and the pros and cons of those options, and then use that to kind of make your final recommendation. Doesn't mean you can't make a recommendation outside of those options. However, it comes to a situation where, you have staff recommendation and the BAC recommendation. And so, but at the end of that process, hopefully the user group and everyone select and a type of art that will work well for that particular project. And then that goes to mayor and commission approval. So that's just the specific site. So the specific spot on that project site. So let's say, we did the arena. We had 3 sites that were approved. We had the interior mural, so that wall on the inside, there was a wall on the outside, and an exterior plaza. So the art has to be in those specific sites that are approved. It can't be like, oh, well, I don't like that wall, I'm gonna do this wall. Like, no, it's gotta be that designated wall. In the event that we do need to change it, like I talked about with Hot Corner, that was kind of a rare case, we do have to go back to mayor and commission for their approval for a new site. So that takes us to step 3, which is the call for art. So that's something that I take care of. I've included in your binders an example of a call for art. All the information includes the last document that we have in there. And it just kind of gives you an idea of all the information that's included in the call, not just information about the site, but information about what's expected of the artist. So that includes things like, schematics and, any kind of specific measurements, any kind of criteria. It can't be this tall, it has to be this tall. It can't be over here, it has to be over here. It's very specific. Usually there's a theme, there's project history, anything that's kind of relevant to inform the project. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, and I know this happens, I don't know if there's a percentage that you can give of proposals that come in, they're just thrown out because they don't meet the criteria that you set up. Like they don't haven't answered all the questions, or they didn't provide schematics, or how often does that happen?
It kind of depends on how popular the call is. For example, like the arena, we had 300 applicants. There were a lot more that just didn't meet the criteria because there was just more applicants. I would say that, it's a small percentage, but it's just like any other application. If you don't complete the application, you just can't consider it. Yeah. It's nothing personal. It's just, and all of our calls, they have to apply through our portal online. So there's like a submission process, very specific. But one thing that I do for each call is I do info sessions. I do in-person site visits. If there is a site to visit, sometimes with new construction like the arena, there's no site. So I can only do like a virtual info session. But normally I do both. And it's just kind of to give an extra, information, or just have an opportunity to ask questions or get clarifications on anything. And of course, my contact info is on all of our calls. I'm always there to answer phone calls, emails throughout, when a call is live, outside of just an info session.
Tatiana, when you said that you're able to go to the site, do you mean with the potential artists as well?
Yes, well, I mean, if they can make it there to the physical site. So really local artists are at an advantage there with site visit. So for example, with Greenway, the Greenway murals, we have people that would meet us on site and go, here's the wall. You can take your own measurements. If you don't like my measurements, you can take your own pictures. You can touch it, feel it, walk around. Yes.
And typically in those, we also have someone who represents that home cost center too.
Yes.
So I was actually privileged enough to be that person, and we were talking about
Yep.
if we need to close it, if we need to help you park something here, so we really try and use, something like that to help break down barriers and answer questions, so that they don't get caught up in a weird technical thing.
Didn't you say you actually FaceTimed these people? for that?
Yeah, I'm down to
Yeah.
do that too,
Yeah.
and I've done that on sites,
Right.
so I try to make myself as available to, answer any questions or make any kind of clarifications with the call. There's certain things that I really, can't do anything about. Our insurance requirements, I know scare a lot of people off. Our contracts are, they're contracts. So a lot of legal language. I mean, there's really no way to change that. So, and a lot of that is just, the risk and liability of a thing in the built environment that could, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong or right with the public art project. And we need to make sure we're protected and our residents are protected too.
But is that any different than any other, like, county or city that does this? I would think they all kind of have some kind of contract. and
You'd be surprised.
They don't?
You'd be surprised. I mean, I view these public art projects as essentially like construction projects. I mean, there's heavy equipment involved, there's heavy materials involved. It's not just sketching in your sketchbook, they're much bigger than that. And I think it makes sense to have those requirements, but there's some places that are a little more lenient or just don't have that oversight of their program. And it also depends on if a public art program is part of the government or part of an independent agency or nonprofit that runs it. So there's a lot of places, like I was just in Macon over the weekend. Their Macon Arts Alliance isn't government. They're a nonprofit that partners with the government, so it's a little bit different, and you tell. Shade, but I think it's good that we have such strict requirements. It really makes for professional results. Selection panels, because that is something that is a big mystery to a lot of people in our community. And as members of this BAC, it's really important that you understand the selection process so you can be ambassadors for any questions that community members might have about it. So with each call for art, we put together a selection panel. We have a sign up on the ACC website. Francis has signed up, a couple of you signed up even before we were members, which is really awesome. Sally, I think, was a sign up on it. And I always try to tell people about that. Please tell people about that because we definitely need more people signing up. You can totally serve on a selection channel more than once, that's fine. But we do try to make it a different group each time, with different people. It's ideally, a very diverse group, but unfortunately, sometimes we have what we have. So part of that selection is reviewing either the proposals or the qualifications, depending on the type of call that we do. And just for the sake of time, I did outline the difference between an RFP and an RFQ in your notes. And some of you know that from previous discussion, but each, whether we do an RFP or an RFQ, it's a similar selection process. The selections are blind. So all names, races, genders, everything is redacted. So you're only seeing either examples of previous work or proposals. And that's what you see. Any questions about that? So in an RFQ situation, it's a two-part selection where you'll be reviewing examples of previous work, just like photos of previous completed work, and then making a short list of finalists from that. And then those finalists are paid a little bit to then submit a final proposal. So, and then you would do another selection. And then with an RFP process, you're just reviewing the proposals right at the start. So RFQs are a two-part selection, RFPs are a one-part selection. That makes sense. And the way we do it is we take the criteria from the call and create a score sheet. So you're scoring with a rubric and you're scoring to the criteria. So you're not comparing proposals or qualifications to each other. You're just scoring them to the criteria, which is really important. And Oh, so once we have a selected piece of public art, that then again goes to mayor and commission for approval. So we have a lot of mayor and commission approvals involved with this. And then step 5 is when we do the contracting and the fabrication and installation. So, yes.
You may have already said this, but I should know this. When someone goes on the website and they're like, I want to be on an art selection panel, or I'm raising my hand as a community member, I want to
Yes.
do that.
Yeah.
Do those people, then do y'all select who those people are, or how do they then get, I don't know, then how do y'all decide who gets on that? And do they stay in there or do they have to reapply
Good
periodically?
question. So those applications come to me, it's just a simple form, and I check that spreadsheet. So when I have a lot of people on the sign up, we have a opportunity to have a selection coming up. I try to give them, approximately 3-4 weeks notice and say, hey, we have this upcoming selection. If you're interested in this project or available to participate, great. Please, I usually have them RSVP. It's really important that they, I know how many, this way if I don't have enough, I can go out and try to recruit some people. If someone doesn't, if they're not interested, oh, I can't do this one, I leave them on the list. And so I have people that have been on my list for a while, and then I take people off as they participate. Sometimes people, want to participate again, and I just say, just let me know, and I'll keep you on my list. Outside of the actual sign-up list, we always invite all the kind of relevant stakeholders, usually members of the user group. If there's a certain, let's say it's a Greenway project, we would invite members of the Greenway Commission to come be part of that selection because it's relevant to them. Or any trail users that might be, involved in any of our programming. So, I try to keep it just kind of diverse and just not too specific, but then we usually try to supplement with, organization members, staff members. In fact, I think it's really important to have at least one staff member from the facility, whether that facility is the building or the trail or the park or whatever, because they can speak to kind of any maintenance or programming concerns that might come with certain pieces of art. Right? So it's good to have a nice broad selection base. And then, yes, contracting can sometimes take a very long time. So some of our projects, if you look at our project chart, they've been in contracting phase for quite a while. That's pretty common. We have all of our contracts have to go through safety and risk review, and they have to be reviewed with the attorney's office, and sometimes more than once. And sometimes we wait several weeks to have another review, which would be the kind of secondary. So it's just kind of, we have a high volume of contracts coming through. Public art is just, one of many. So, but, the fabrication and installation can be a lot of fun. We try to document it all on social media and share that with the community. We have a piece going up so they know that they can see it in process and come to the ribbon cutting, and it's all said and done. So that's public art process.
Sure. Regarding both calls for art and then also selection panels.
Yes.
I'm aware as somebody who has applied for the selection panel before, being part of the commission, but I'm just curious, in case I'm missing any of your communications, like outlets or outreach to get the community to know about the calls for art. So we use social media and the website.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious, how else what other points of contacts?
Where
Yeah,
we post calls or we post selection?
I guess both. I'm just curious, how outreach happens for both. of those.
Yes. So for calls for art, we, depending on how big the budget is, if it's over 10,000, we do a national call. We advertise on publicartist.org is a really kind of a wide news site. Cafe, Americans for the Arts, and CodeWorks are kind of our big advertisements outside of local. But obviously local newspapers, social media, we have a lot of, emotional partners. So, and as far as selection notifications, every time we have our newsletter go out, there's a link to sign up. Our public information office does a little, push, because that's really for local participants only. So we don't do any kind of like national call for selection panel members. We keep that local. So,
And the Cultural Affairs Commission has done that with their booths at like ACFest and stuff.
sure, yeah, kind of table and stuff. Yeah. Public art criteria, some of this stuff is familiar to you, but this is kind of the general criteria that we use to kind of select projects or sites. Again, we don't want art that's below ground, things like that. And again, it has to be safe and located on public properties. That's just kind of the general criteria. And then we have a lot of past projects, but we don't really have time to go through them. So I'll send this out to everybody so you can kind of look through it. It gives you an idea of some of the budgets and things like that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go over a couple, so these are some things, we're not gonna take it in depth, right? Because it's a long day, everyone's gonna work all day, right? But so I'm gonna go into more detail about these opportunities in meetings, and they'll be more thorough, but I am touching on them because they are the things that are the priorities for FY '24 with the public art program. So we have pretty much completed our public art master plan. We did all the things that were in there. And we think this is an excellent time to update that master plan. Like, we're at a really good point where we can like start to see what does it look like, especially as we look at the clock ticking down on SPLOST 2011 money, right? And so we've been talking to Todd Resi, who authored our first master plan with us. So he's a number of communities across that he's worked with have been doing the same thing. They've also completed all their homework and now they want more. So we've talked to Todd, which is great because that's an easier, like, is it proprietary? What did you call it?
Yeah, if it's continuation of the
Yes.
work, it's proprietary.
So it helps because that's like a smoother way for us to engage with Todd. So we've already talked to Todd. He'd love to come back. He's very excited. So some of the things to think about would be a 6-month process to do this update. So it would build on what he's already done and we would bring him up to date. And then that could start as soon as October, which is incredible, right? Plan to build on what we've already accomplished, an opportunity for the ACAC to help shape the future of the public art program, because this will be like a really big part for y'all to help facilitate, because we're gonna do a lot of community engagement, surveys, focus groups, facilitated discussions with artists in Athens, with the ACC staff, with community members. And that really, the idea is to develop at least a 5-year action plan and a roadmap forward for like what we're going to see. We can look down the road and see what other SPLOST funding we know is out there. We can kind of see like what that capital percent's gonna look like and start to see like, here's how we can work. Also to help us shape like to assess the roles of this body as well as staff and like all of our community partners. Like, it's nice to have a third party view, right? To kind of come in and help us like see ourselves. So I'll talk about this more in depth. Might even have Todd join us one night via video. That would be fun. Todd's a really cool guy. So we can talk about that. So this is something to put on the roster, something we're gonna work on. Another thing that is near and dear to my heart, which is advocacy and education, professional development for practicing artists. So we've done a number of things in the arts division, from summits and otherwise. So I went to the Creative Placemaking Leadership Summit in Chapel Hill last fall. And I saw a woman from Triangle Artworks named Cynthia give this presentation about this service that they offer. And I was like, this is what we really need. So I'm just gonna go over really quickly. I got 2 slides about this. I have a more in-depth slide presentation that she gave, and we can also do a call with her. She's really cool. It's a full 6-week course delivered live in virtual content, so people can be at home, which really helps with like childcare and transportation. Like, we can really reach people where they are. It's a virtual classroom with interactive elements, and participants will also have one-on-one mentoring and peer-to-peer connections. It's all about responding to a call for art. It's really about how to apply to get an art project, which is what I think the artists in our community like really need that. We've seen it from applications, and we also know that like not only will we have better and more applicants from our own community, they will also be prepared to work in other areas. It's like much what David touched on, like there's only so much work in our own town, but there's lots regionally. And so we could really build and prepare people for the kind of work that have on offer here through our 1%, but also like broadly. So that looks like so it's a lot about professional development, creating their basic support materials, proper CV, having slides, references, letters of interest, how to perform their due diligence, doing site visits, like formulating, asking the right questions in an email, kind of like that kind of questions people call and ask Tatiana. So doing accessibility studies, those are all in-class case studies, budgeting cost evaluations, how to like budget for your time, what to charge for your time, how long is this going to take? What kind of materials do I need? How much paint do I need to do like a mural on the side of the Costa building? Like that artist had to move from a smaller mural, remember? From the side of the Morton to the Costa building, which was like double in size. Like he had to do the math quickly, remember? In order to make it work. So like that's the kind of thing they want. They need to develop that skill. Behind the scenes insight, public art professionals, including architects, engineers, arts administrators, vendors, or what not to do, case studies, looking at what unsuccessful applications look like and seeing what good ones look like. This is one that got work. Also, participants will work on and complete a real live call for art. It can be for us. We're still working with this Triangle Arts, so there's an opportunity where they could actually use one of our calls for art, or they could bring their own call for art. There's a lot of they do a lot of vetting on the front end to help these artists be prepared to take this class and succeed. So this includes 2 Triangle Arts trainers, up to 30 participants in the class. It's fully facilitated on Zoom. That includes all the course materials. My proposition is that the cultural affairs, we would decide to do this and support it, and financially it would be no cost to the artists. They would have to go through the application program, but it would be like at no cost to Athens artists to participate. They have a private social media group. There would also be opportunities for an in-person field trip that Tatiana and I would help facilitate, like to come see an artist in Athens who was literally doing an installation so they could meet and talk and see in real time. And so there's a pre-course application and interviews, and there's of course surveys. So I'm going to talk about, we have a budget slide at the end, but one of the other things about this, and I'm just gonna, like I said, I have a whole other slide deck all about this topic, so I can really get into the weeds with this. I think this is a really good place for us to start with, like, what I think artists in Athens could really use support like this, and it's really encouraging. There's a lot of like very close mentoring that comes with this program. Also, there's an opportunity to build this program out that we could train trainers as part of this program who would eventually be able to teach this we would license it through Triangle, but we could teach it as we wanted to, as needed in our community. So we can talk that out, what that looks like, cost and timeline, when I go into it more. Okay, what am I talking about next? Oh yeah, so the other thing I want to touch on is where we're at with public art maintenance. This is a photo I just took like 2 weeks ago. It's like 103 degrees outside. We have funding. We got funding built in our budget to perform maintenance on the public art collection. So now, I am challenged, and Tatiana is working with me to create a public art maintenance program. I'm just kind of starting from like, not scratch, but kind of, right? So I just one of the first requests we had was from the library to clean this work before they had a ribbon cutting and a dedication at that plaza. Do you know that's like the corner right there in front of the library? So we hired a local artist that we've worked with before who has this kind of skill. We contracted with this person to come and clean the work to the specifications. So it can only be tap water because it goes directly into the, anyway, so that was just plain water, pressure washer. So you can see that's underway. So I just wanted to give that photo as like, it was like a first time we ever did it. Yeah, Alex?
Well, we got funding. It's not, I won't say that the fight is over for more money.
Right.
So.
We got some to get us started.
Some to get started, but it's definitely not all.
That's not one of the buckets that we.
That's not even, yeah.
Completely separate.
For new projects, does it now get integrated into the budget and there is a maintenance?
Kind of, yeah.
Because like the SPOS budget doesn't really cover like operational costs, which maintenance is more of an operational thing. We always ask for a maintenance plan as part of the final deliverable, so we know what kind of maintenance we're looking at, and that's part of the proposal process as well. So if it's something that we know that we can't maintain, that's something we decide kind of early on. But as far as like, is it built into the project budget?
Okay, so here's where we're at with it. Right now, I'm working on the scope. What is in our collections? We can officially decide what is in, where is it located. And then we're gonna work on condition reporting with standard language and standard documentation practice. We've already done some trial runs with that. Complete photo inventory. We're gonna have some contract labor help us document the whole collection, so we have good photos for both the website and for this purpose as well. I know, we're gonna do, it's like twofold. I know you love it. Integration into our city work system, which is like a maintenance software system we have that's like geo located with a photo. We can keep it all tracked, right? We're gonna revise, we're gonna review and potentially revise our donation and de-accession policies, because that's what you do when you pull together. And then we'll also work on like, what does the labor look like? The photographer, condition reporting, repair and cleaning. So we're looking at like, we want to build a roster, if you will, of people who are qualified for this. And we know we will have to, and also engage potentially competitors and other people's opinions. So we're looking at like developing a little Rolodex of who are those people that can just like, everything from pressure washing with tap water to like color matching paint or something. So I'm working on that. This is where we're at with public art maintenance plan.
Who was it that did that, presentation on public art?
Oh, Ellie Swinson.
So Ellie Swinson was someone that we engaged with contract labor funds
Yeah.
to help us review where we were with it all and help us like put a scope to it, which is really what informed the funding that we received and where we're at with it. So it really helped set us up to be like, what are other people doing and like where are we getting? It was like a jump start to this, and we're really grateful that they did. It was really good.
And yeah, this is when I was brand new and I was like, I had no idea.
Well,
Well, it's like, right.
That's like, there's a lot of
That's still available for the new people, because like.
Oh, yeah.
Just put that in our.
Oh, please do.
This is really good.
Like,
This is a really deep topic. If you wanna, anybody wants to get in on this with me, let me know, because like I come from a library background, not a librarian, but art history and library work, so I understand about condition reports and documentation, and we gotta keep all these good records so that we can make this work.
Yeah, I'll put all of these presentations into a shared.
So thank you. Do you have one more? No, we're gonna talk about, okay, I'm gonna touch on community collaboration for you a little bit. Okay. So Tatiana's gonna give a presentation in the future about community collaborations, which is a program that she's been working on. And she's gonna give a deeper presentation. She has it all prepared, but I'm not gonna put you guys through all that at the very end here because it's a lot. But the idea is that, yes, we do want to have artists make work, but we really need to have it clearly and evidently for the public and on our property. So we have developed a program to that effect where we nominate sites, and we build out from there. The other thing is that we're going to have opportunities to engage artists from a more like performing arts side with events that we already have in our calendar. And so I'm going to give a little short presentation at one of your meetings here in the near future with some opportunities already on the calendar. So like the Lantern Parade will be in mid-March of next year. So having like artists create work and participate in that, that's a thing we already know. We know it's for the public good. We know it's on government property. Hiring someone to sing or read a poem or do a performance at like the raising of the Juneteenth flag or the Pride flag. Like these are opportunities we see on the calendar that we may add and integrate artists in our community into those spaces. So that's kind of the thing I'm going to touch on, and we're going to talk. I need y'all, ideas from you about how we can like shape that going out. Okay. So that's just a preview about some things to come that we have prepared, but I think there's a lot of PowerPoints, y'all. Been at this for a while. So this is a general sketch of the budget that we have for like where we have some earmarks in place. So the professional development for artists, these are also either the range of or the high bar. So 15 at the top, right? For that Triangle Artworks training process. A public art master plan update. We could split those two funds between operating and capital. We're holding some money aside for RFQ artist fees. These are just like, I don't know if it'll be 5K, it'll be somewhere under that amount, but we're just kind of like, here's the top. Completing the ACAC website. There's a holding 5K there. Community collaborations, those are kind of what we're using to talk about like the murals on Heard and Lake Park community centers. So that's what that refers to. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, that's the next one, 22 down. Community collaborations is the program that Tatiana is going to describe where like we can put public art on sites that either were built before the ordinance and never got any art. They might be like, we would love some art. We would love a sculpture outside of our building. So we could build out and talk about what it would be like to build a call out for that and like place art because we have funds to dedicate to that.
And that ties to going to the dance center, y'all. Like we're at the dance center, we kind of talk around that. That's where we're at.
We've done, so Tatiana used the dance center as like her, like test subject for her program design. So we worked with the staff there and like, that's a site that was built literally like the year, I think, before some of these, but I think something like that, but they were very smart. So there's some, also we can look at like, where are parts of the city that have less art? So we can talk about those kind of things and start to like build those in a way that, that we can achieve, given the staff and resources that we have. And that we know that we have clear spaces and funding for. And then we have earmarked for the community center murals with the renovations, the external renovations, like Heard Park is currently underway. Lake Park is completed. We've seen it. It's blue and beautiful. We're so excited for Heard. And then there'll be some, y'all went by Heard Park tonight, so that was part of why I was on your tour. And then the Athens Music Walk of Fame, plus the pianos. We think maybe we might do a few more pianos. Because I think the one in the library's been out there far too long. We've had it tuned, we had it painted, but I think the tuner was like.
So was the last time.
Yeah, he's like, I can't tune it anymore. But I think that was, we might talk about that as an opportunity. We earmarked some funds for that. And then just some other ACAC art opportunities. And I think that's what I mean by like the lantern parade, sing a song for Juneteenth, or like some kind of performance aspects that we know are going to be on government property and that we know are going to be for the public good. So that's some of the funding that we wrote down in this grid. Let's do it. All right. It's a lot of information. Thank you all. I know it's a really long day and meeting. I know we're trying to mix it up and keep it lively, but it is a ton of information and we will share it with you. And also, thank you for the generosity of like showing up and being a cultural affairs member. Like, thank you for serving your community and we really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to all the amazing things that we can do. And I think the work that the conversations and the work and opportunity of working with Todd Brezzi on the public art master plan update, I think is gonna be really meaningful to like, I'm excited for that because like, I want to be in that. I want to be in the mix and I want to see who y'all invite and who we include from our community to really arrive at like, what does the next 5 years look like? What does 10 years look like? Like that's the conversations that we're really ready to have in the public art program right now. So thank you all so much for being here tonight.
I have a quick question. So talking about the Resi thing, let's say that we wanted to go for it. Is there like a vote that we have to go for it? You guys decide to go for it, you know what I'm saying? And then does that have to trickle over to the mayor and commission? They're like, yeah, you can spend the money. Like, how's that process?
Okay. So, that was a big part of the conversation where Nikki came and talked to y'all in a meeting. So it used to be that, yes, it would have to be a mayor and commission vote, even to spend $1 by the paper clips. But now the money's having over to leisure services.
Okay.
So they fall within our normal spending perspective. So knowing that you guys are on board with it, we're meeting objectives, that's why we're talking about a general spend plan. But no, we're not to do votes or anything like that. But we will follow our procurement procedures. So if, you know, a $20,000, we'll have to get approved by the manager's office, but it streams, the money will be more streamlined now.
But a consensus among this, like a voting is that says we support this strongly as a commission, I think is important. So that we understand it and we feel like, yes, this is the thing we should do forward. So I really think we can have it.
And the way y'all do things, you all bring things to us. You're the experts. You bring suggestions to us, things like that. Is it our job to then go, like Victoria's job would be like, do we have a motion or do we vote on this? Or do y'all say, hey, we need some approval on this?
Yes, we'll
Like-
be like, Tatiana will say, you have to vote on this. Like, one of the next things will happen in the next meeting was like, you'll see that T-Splosh, like the projects that need to be selected and negotiated, which ones are gonna get art, like, you have to vote on that. We have to make a letter. It's official. So that is a thing you have to do. And she will give you a PowerPoint and you will decide collectively and you will vote on that. So we will, like, this tonight is an official meeting, but there's nothing on the agenda for y'all to vote on. This is like orientation, but it's still a meeting because you have, anyway, you know what I'm saying. So there will be opportunities for, us to meet and hear about all of these in depth as we go forward for the rest of the calendar year. So we'll have like more PowerPoints, but more opportunities to like, here's where y'all can help us. Here's where you can make recommendations. Here's where you can help us shape where we're going with this. But like in these priorities that we laid out.
You guys have done a massive amount of work and research, and thank you.
Yeah.
Because you make our job a lot easier because it's just there. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for helping us out. Yes.
I'm just wondering, what the official committees are. I think we talked about this before. I mean, there's outreach.
There's an outreach committee,
Is that
and it's the only committee right now.
Okay.
But there might be other committees, there might be a committee for the public art master plan, or, you know, something like that. So special, like kind of special project committees. There used to be outreach committee and project committee, but a lot of the project stuff is handled, by staff.
I should mention as well that as a department, Leisure Services is currently looking into candidates for developing a master plan for our entire department, and that will include the arts division and will include the public art. So get ready for some focus groups, people in coming away. That's what they love to do, right? But it's important. It's like come and have a snack and like listen to people give you choices and talk it out. So it will, you know, that'll be really important, especially that master plan will help shape how our whole department moves forward from every trail, park and zoo, as well as like the work we will do to update our internal art master plan. So there's a lot of like opportunity for us to have dialogue and visioning and thinking about where we've been and where we're going.
But the goal is to have, you know, bring information to you all as a group. So we're not doing as much in committees because it's really important that you kind of making recommendations as a group. And so you get all the information as a group.
Well, one thing I want to be as kind of as clear as possible, like A to B. The effort of the triangle group is a way, and it's so interesting that that could really be that way that we can execute the art community goal.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I just, you know, I don't want somebody to feel like we have forgotten about talking about that, because I think a question would come up about it. But that really, it's all, every time there's a call, there's at least one email afterwards. It's like,
Why was there anything like that?
exactly, yeah, where are the local people, or, hey, this local artist didn't get an interview, you know, what's going on here? And we see that and hear that, and this is hopefully a way to help fix that. So, I'm super excited about that aspect, but above all, you know, helping build the
Yeah,
talent.
professional development is a huge part of what we do in the arts division, and we are touching on, we're doing it differently from doing summits. We're doing like, they just had a master class in the dance center last week. We have like hanging your artwork at the Linden House. We have like contractor and theater development work happening at the Morton. Like we are touching on all of that, and we see ourselves as like a part of that. And this is also an opportunity to help the artists who live here to work with us and beyond. And this, I think Triangle is like a really great way to do that because it's virtual and people can really, they can really tap into it. I think it's, like I said, the presentation that I'll show you, like that they put together is great. It was just, it's big. So I just boiled it down to my 2 slides. Anything else? I've been troopers. It's like 10 till 8.
Motion.
Thanks for dinner.
Yes, thank you all for dinner. That was-
I got some containers, if y'all want to take some to go, there's plenty of food left. There's a
Don't be
little
shy.
Tupperware jammers over there, so yourself.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.